Hello and welcome to another analog podcast. I haven't figured out a name, so we're just going to call it another analog podcast. We're going to stick with it. This is a show discussing photography, printmaking, all things analog, and occasionally digital. My name is Matt Beatty, and I will be your host. And today I'm excited to be joined by Eric O'Connell. He's a photographer, a professor, and honestly, general good guy. I'm really excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is cool.
It's a little something different for us, you know? We're going to do some video instead of some stills. We're going to do some audio.
All right.
It's not something I do a lot, so it's kind of fun. No whiskey today. On our previous episode, we had whiskey, but it's earlier in the day than it was last time, and that's probably a terrible idea.
Probably for me, since I got to go teach later.
Yeah. You know, I was in a class where the professor and his TA would go to the bar for 2 hours before every class.
Wow.
Office hours before class, have a couple of drinks.
Go do class.
Go teach class.
Yeah, I think those days are frowned upon now.
Can't do that anymore. Can't hit kids with rulers. So much you can't do.
No.
Anyway, let's sort of jump right in, I guess, with if you could give me a little bit of your background as to how you got into photography in the beginning, whenever that was.
Okay. In the beginning,
there was film.
There was film. There was these amazing photographers in probably my parents' National Geographics. Mm. And I read only the captions of photos and looked at the photos.
Yeah, what else would you need?
That's how you read magazines, as far as I'm concerned about it. And so this influence of magazines and all that kind of stuff and that type of adventure and I don't know, there was something, I couldn't verbalize it back then, but I think the camera was a means to go out and explore the world. It was an excuse.
Totally.
So I didn't know what to do. I took all the photography courses I could in college, which were all the art courses plus all the photojournalism courses, and ended up with a degree in photojournalism.
So you started shooting in college, or did you pick it up before then?
At 16 years old, a buddy of mine discovered the power of photography because it allowed us to like go shoot the cheerleaders at practice and stuff like that.
Nice.
And so we did that. He got me into it. And then
Sweet.
Later we tried creative things, like we would turn off all the lights, stand in the doorway like a zombie, and then run flashlights behind us to paint, basically light painting.
Yep.
When we were 16 years old. So then in college, 18, 19, 20, I took one photo course. That was it. I never didn't take a photo course. And I got the degree I got because it was like, well, that's where you got the most credits. Great. You know?
We can't kick you out of the darkroom, so I guess you're going to be a photographer.
Right. So
and it was all film then.
All film.
There was
film.
There may have been digital cameras, but they weren't what professionals used.
No, there were no digital cameras that I know of.
Nothing.
This is the late 80s.
Oh, wow. Dating yourself a little.
I know. See the wise.
He's very wise. So, okay. College, pick it up. Were you aiming at a photojournalism career, having been influenced by the magazines, or did you shift gears?
No, I was. And I was the photo editor for our school newspaper. We had a school magazine, believe it or not, I worked at. I was a stringer for the Associated Press.
Ooh.
Occasionally we'd get a little assignment from like the Albuquerque Journal, which was the big newspaper in the state.
Nice.
And yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew there was something around there that I wanted to do. And when I graduated, I was in a band. I'm a drummer. And the guitar player, he got a PhD ship at Georgia Tech. And so he's moving to Georgia. And I graduated at the same time. He graduated with a master's. And I thought, well, I might as well move to Atlanta. And so I moved to Atlanta, and within 2 weeks had a job at a newspaper, the Marietta Daily Journal, which is about the same circulation as the Albuquerque Journal was back then.
Okay.
And within 6 months, I just hated life, right? And it had to do really with the job, where it was, and how the conception of photojournalism was not the same as what I had in my head.
Wandering around shooting the everyday happenings of...
Well, no, if you didn't shoot a person, doing this amazing thing on a swing for this feature shoot, that was from the county that this paper covers, doesn't matter that it happened in that county, didn't count. The fact that you didn't get this girl's name and her parents' name and her grandparents' name and where they lived and what, like, it was just like, okay, this is not good.
A little old-fashioned.
Yeah, and I made as much money as he did as a graduate student. So it was really, like, awful. We'd save all our money and once a month go get drunk and blow it all, on $5 pitchers of Genesee.
That's what it takes sometimes. I get it.
So I got an internship then at Outside Magazine.
Sweet.
And they were in Chicago at the time. So I moved to Chicago, took this internship.
Was it a paid internship?
Yeah, but not much.
Yeah.
Barely making it.
Right.
But still making it. And that was always temporary. Mm-hmm. And when it ended, I had applied to go to the University, the School of Journalism, University of Missouri at Columbia. So then that place and Athens, Ohio were the premier kind of schools for photojournalism. Athens was more commercial photography and such like that. And I went and really quickly thought, what the hell am I doing here?
No.
They're preparing me for another job at a newspaper.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I just did that.
Right.
And so I called the photo editor at Outside, had become friends, cried on her shoulder. She said, guess what? This really big photographer just moved to New Mexico from New York and he's looking for an assistant. I said, great. I called him up. He quizzed me. Do you know this strobe? Do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know this? Do you know that? All my answers were no.
I'm clueless.
Because, what do you learn in Photo J school? Nothing, really. Like purple mode, green mode on the strobe, trying to guess what your strobe power is. Where he's using, these other strobes.
Big, fancy commercial lights.
And he literally said, and I quote, "Why should I hire you? You don't know shit." And I said, because I'll learn. And I literally hung up the phone, paid off my roommate, packed my truck, and drove to his doorstep and showed up in the middle of a Time magazine cover shoot.
Oh.
Which then he just proceeded to berate me. Go get this. And I'd run and go, didn't know what I was looking for to get, and run back and be like, is this it? No. Like this.
And you can't pull out your phone and Google it. They don't exist. There are no cell phones.
So I put up with the humiliation because I knew I wanted to be a photographer. I knew I needed to learn. Somehow knew this was the path.
And you had accepted that, okay, newspapers are not the way.
Right.
And maybe you have to shift out of PJ to continue to shoot.
Yeah, I actually thought I'll learn this lighting and all this stuff with this guy, and then I'll go back to journalism, and then I'll even be better because I'll know how to light things and do things.
Well, that's the strobist path, so I can appreciate
But then
that.
I kind of never went. I went back to that in certain ways, but once I got on this path, and we actually ended up becoming friends and stuff. Then later things got weird, but well, that was his deal. But I learned what I needed to do, and I opened the doors that I needed to open for myself, and that was it. Started going to New York with portfolios, knocking on doors. I was so-and-so's assistant. Can I see you? Sure. And I would show my portfolio and then go to the next. And someone gave me a chance. And then 15 years later, I woke up going, holy shit, I've been busy.
So at that point, you pretty much shifted to commercial. Is that right?
Yeah.
What kind of commercial work were you doing mostly?
Mostly portraits and some coverage of events or coverage of things and stuff like this. Like Anne Rice's annual Halloween party, which is over the top.
I'll bet it was.
In New Orleans. We had to cover it for People magazine, that kind of thing.
Cool.
Right? That type of coverage, or do a story about this thing, or these heroin murders in southern New Mexico. I had to cover for a magazine, which required finding these addicts and finding these people and trying to take their pictures,
right,
portraits, but also trying to get context and things. So I knew how to tell a story as a journalist. I knew how to ask the who's, what's, when, where's, why's, and how's. And I was good at it. But also there were separate things like go shoot this scientist who's, changing the rotation of the Earth with duct tape and aluminum foil. And you're like, okay, how am I going to concept that and like make a cool picture, because you can't just show up and shoot the guy.
Right. No.
You have to do something conceptual and like think about it and
Right. A
stuff
little more
like that.
editorialized than just raw
Yeah.
photojournalism.
And I was really, really good at that.
Nice.
Really good at it. I could think on my feet. You know, I had several different tricks up my sleeve with lighting and film stocks and things, and I really experimented a lot with film and film stocks and stuff.
Interesting.
You know,
So you're still, it's a full analog workflow still.
full. I didn't go digital till 2006.
See, it's interesting because even big commercial shoots now are almost exclusively digital. Sometimes the photographer will bring a film camera,
Right.
but people who shoot commercial on film for a living are a rare breed these days.
Extremely.
I've never actually heard what that workflow is like. So was there like a camera film stock development method that you had like dialed in as your favorite, you know?
Oh yeah, we shot Fuji, or I shot Fuji RDP, and then it changed to RDP2, which sucked. Then it changed to RDP3, right, and then all that. But it was always overexpose, close to half a stop,
Yep.
and then push the film anywhere between a quarter and a half a stop
Ooh, nice.
to really make it sizzle. You know?
Nice.
But that has
35?
and medium format
Uh-huh.
and sometimes 4x5. I shot
Ooh.
4x5 on some jobs. I would just go ahead and do it, which I loved. It was fun shooting. Like show up to shoot a bunch of businessmen at some high-end place in New York
With a view camera.
with a view camera. You know, but it was cool because I had this thing where I had this little Contax G2 that
Oh yeah.
like I tried to train my assistant, like when I'm not going click and they're doing something and you're loading and I want to have this and be going click, 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 click all around.
Right.
And I was really trying to work that. And that was about the time when things started going, no, we're going digital in this world now.
Right.
And it was a weird transition for me.
And the early digital cameras were terrible. Like film, especially medium and large format, was so much better.
Well, actually, in the early 90s, that guy I worked for, Kodak, gave us that Kodak Nikon DCS camera that was literally like that tall.
It's enormous.
And it was like 2 megapixels or something.
It took like a massive floppy hard drive.
Yeah,
looking
and you're like,
thing, and-
chunk. And then you're like waiting for your whatever
Windows
computers.
95 computer.
Or the Apple II or whatever it was back then. They were
Uh-huh.
still kind of cream colored, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It was before they came out with all their colors, the G3.
Nice.
So yeah, that was just an experiment.
Right.
And you could see the potential. And I moved to San Francisco in 99, in 99. And I remember working in a studio. I had to do this still life for a greeting card company. And the photographer there had that digital camera and he was really,
Pushing it.
yeah, like this whole bank of stuff here. He had computers that big to sort of run this thing, right?
Which you had to have. They were huge computers then.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the start, but it didn't hit for me. I didn't buy a digital until 2006.
Which cameras did you use mostly?
All Hasselblads,
Ah,
still have all of those, 3 of them.
nice.
I loved, and I shot it all the time, my Mamiya RZ. That Contax,
Yeah.
and whatever Nikon at the time. I started out with FEs and FM2s and
Yeah.
FE2s and an F3 I had. The F3 was awesome. That thing could drive a nail. I mean, it survived a big hurricane in Atlanta while I was a journalist there. I mean, it survived, meaning it crapped out on me. I wasn't used to that kind of rain coming from New Mexico,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
All the other photographers were prepared. They have their giant golf umbrella and they're just shooting. Like, yeah, there's a hurricane, it's raining, but I'm shooting. Me, I like jump out of the car and I'm like, oh shit, it's raining. Shoot, do this.
Ah, yeah.
And then the camera failed, but literally I did what they said. Put it in the oven for a while,
Ah, yes.
dry it out. Camera kept working. No
Love
problem.
that. Gets wet, craps out, pull the film out, put it in the oven.
Yeah.
Keep
And
shooting the next day.
it actually worked.
Love
The
that.
sort of fairy tale of doing that worked.
That's amazing. So along this photographic journey from, high school to getting into PJ to commercial, did you have someone you considered like a a mentor, somebody who you could go to with like, what is happening? What am I doing? How do I get to the next level? Did you have that person?
At first, when I was still an assistant, because I was an assistant to this guy, actually a better term would be indentured servant.
Same thing.
For 3 to 3.5 years.
Wow.
Right. So at the 3-year mark, I started getting out of it, getting jobs, getting things, and he was helpful. Like,
you've earned
send
it.
me there, send me there, send me there. But then this weird stuff happened where, like, I don't know. I don't even want to go into it because it just was weird and didn't understand it. And so after that, no, there wasn't a lot of mentorships. It was just literally work.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so busy at the height of the dot-com boom when I moved to San Francisco. I didn't put myself in the hospital, but I should have. But I put myself in bed for like 14 days on 2 separate occasions because I was just burning the candle at all the ends and in the middle too.
Yep.
Just working like crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And it was crazy having that kind of money and just doing that, you know, it was a weird thing.
Is there a piece of advice you wish you had been given?
Yes.
During that period of time?
Yes.
What would it be?
First of all that money, invest it.
Ah.
Right?
Rather than the pictures and
like the literally, like, you know, pay yourself first. I thought meant, well, I got money in the bank, I just paid myself.
Right.
No. Pay yourself first means put it somewhere where it's going to make money for you and you can't touch it.
Okay.
Buy an apartment. Buy stocks and bonds. Like be serious about this.
Use like adult thoughts about money.
And use adult thoughts about money about running your business. Because later in 2008-ish, when the financial we had that collapse, that was like a perfect storm of that happening. Advertising dollars go down. Magazines start going online. The way images got bought and sold became more prioritized through Getty and all these big stock agencies.
Yep.
Those prices started dropping off the face of the earth. Like, everything changed. It was a weird, perfect storm.
Yeah.
I had made so much money that it didn't really feel it. And I didn't understand how to change my business to adapt with the times. All I knew is things weren't working the way they used to work. Right?
That's a scary place to be.
And I didn't know how to roll with it.
Right.
And I failed. I mean, I ended up losing everything.
Damn.
I went back to school and got a graduate degree in visual anthropology from the University of Southern California, thinking I'm going to do things differently. Also thinking, like, $60,000, it's nothing, man. I'll pay that off tomorrow.
Right.
But
and then waking up and realizing, ooh,
tomorrow never came on that one.
Yikes.
Like, just it was hard. It was hard to lose everything.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break for a note from our non-existent sponsors. Okay, and we're back. So, that's kind of an awkward break. You've just lost everything in this, from an extremely successful career, not having put your money to work for you the way that you wanted, and you're basically starting from scratch.
Totally.
What did that look like?
Awful.
Aside from the tears, how did you approach that?
I went to graduate school.
That's a great way to put it, graduate school.
I hid out,
Right.
and put it on student loan that I thought I'd pay off no problem.
Sure.
Because the amount was like an easy amount for me. That was that was a quarter of what I made annually.
Right. In your previous life.
Right.
Sort
like
of.
it was like a different life suddenly. Right. And then that was a struggle, getting through all that, trying to figure it out, trying to make things stick. I felt like I was throwing a lot of things against a wall and none of it was sticking, know. And eventually that led me to teaching. I had been developing a relationship with the photo program and some professors here over the course of the years because
At NAU.
At NAU, because I would drive from LA to New Mexico to see my parents often.
And we're right in the middle.
And you're right in the middle. Sometimes I'd stay and that kind of thing. And, I was impressed with the program, like the cool looking photo studios and the people and all this stuff. And a job became available. And this person said, hey, you ought to apply. And I said, okay, I'll apply. And, thank God I had a professor friend at the University of New Mexico who kind of helped me apply. I had no idea what applying to be a professor. It is not your standard job application.
More painful.
Unbelievable. The interview was a day, 13-hour day.
Oh, holy moly.
It's crazy.
That's a lot.
And the things you have to write and talk about and then give mock classes and do and this and like...
It's the exact opposite of working as a commercial photographer.
Exact opposite. And then the like by a committee on a phone giving you an interview prior, if you pass that, then you get invited for the in-person.
Yeah.
And just... It was insane. I had no idea what to expect. I'd never been in academia.
Right.
But I got the job. And I was like, oh my God, I guess I'm leaving LA and moving to Flagstaff. So here I go.
Awesome.
And that was that. That was 7 years ago, or 6. I'm starting into my 7th year now.
So I can't go through this conversation without touching base on this thing that happened in your life. So somewhere in that story, you were in New York for 9/11.
Yeah.
And you happened to have a camera on you.
New York was crazy because I entered New York on a total disaster, 9/11.
That was like right when you moved there?
Right when I moved there. And then I exited, actually was prevented from exiting because of Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, no.
Like no one could get to my neighborhood in Brooklyn. I couldn't leave. Trees were down everywhere. Like the movers were supposed to show up that day.
Oh.
Boom, hurricane. Phones can't, like I had no idea. Are they going to come I don't know. It took 3 or 4 or 5 days before they finally came to get me again,
Oh my God.
So in and out on a disaster in New York. About a little more than almost 12 years. And, but I had moved to New York. I literally arrived on July 4th.
Wow.
And spent July sort of, waiting for the movers to show up and getting my stuff and kind of organizing. And then I took the entire month of August and went to Italy. And I took a workshop with a big photojournalist guy, Antonin Kratokville. And I took that workshop because a dear friend of mine, someone I've known now 26 years or something, she was the art director for Arena Editions, which they published 56 high-end photo books, the top photographers in the world in 7 years, and she designed every one of those books and went on press on most of them.
Holy moly.
Antonin's was one of them.
Nice.
She said, Eric, I think you should take Antonin's workshop. I said, Elsa, cool.
And this is in the commercial phase. You're doing reasonably well with your life.
Yeah, and I was inspired by Antonin. I was doing reasonably well, but there was also like, you want to do things better, differently.
Totally.
Figure things out. Antonin was an inspiration because no one really knows this part of him. In the 70s, he was an LA studio photographer. Medium format, softboxes, that whole 9 yards, right?
Yep.
But he's not known for any of that. No one's even seen that work. I have because I lived in the same building as him later. But he one day, this is his story, his assistant comes, starts getting everything out, and he says, no, in his Czechoslovakian, well, he's Czech, but in this voice, 35 millimeter, black and white, and a reflector. That's it.
Oh, man after my own heart.
And that's what he did. From that day forward, he just said, no more.
Love that.
So he was able to just, I'm going to do this.
Right.
Right? And that's when his career took off. Big time.
Sometimes simplicity is key.
And so I was inspired by that. Plus, that was my background.
Sure.
And so I took the workshop. My friend was meeting him there because she was on press in Italy for a different book. And then delivering his book like an example. And then she and I went and vacationed together.
Nice.
In Sardinia and stuff like that. It was wonderful. And then I come back at literally the end of August.
Yep.
And 11 days later, these airplanes hit this tower, and I lived, maybe the blocks are different down there. They're shorter and stuff in the old part of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 4 or 5 blocks from the World Trade Center site.
Right.
So I was setting up for a still life. I had to shoot these shoes. And I had the TV on, and I realized, and Matt Lauer and Katie Couric at the time and all of a sudden, that gets interrupted. And I remember it was a Hispanic voice saying, I think a Cessna or something hit the building. He was a janitor. And then they show this hole in the side of this building with fire coming out of it. And I was like, come on, a Cessna? Dunk. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
Right? Not that.
Right.
And this table and R2, these are the World Trade Center to Manhattan.
Sure.
A monkey could miss those.
Anybody could miss that.
That is a target.
Right.
And that is exactly what went through my head. And then I was like, I'm a journalist. I got to go. And my camera bag was still full of all the black and white film from Antonine's workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I grabbed it and literally left the building. And my building went. And I remember thinking, there are no earthquakes here. And I didn't experience an earthquake in San Francisco like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know at the time, but what it was the second plane hitting the second tower.
As you're exiting your building.
Running. So I ran and then just made my way up towards it. And, the pictures we're going to show in this exhibit are kind of start to talk about that and all the just weirdness as I'm going up to it and what's going on and blah, blah, blah,
So you had Tri-X. I've seen the contact sheets.
Yeah.
Was that a film you spent a lot of time with? Was it just whatever happened to be in your bag?
Tri-X was always my go-to black and white film. Always.
Okay. Just
Default.
When in doubt, shoot Tri-X.
Yeah, loved it. I experimented with the various Ilfords and HPs this and that's and all that kind of stuff. And I liked them, but I just couldn't get out of, Tri-X just, you could mess up 5 stops and it's still okay on Tri-X.
You can do anything you want to that film. It's extremely versatile, and that's one of the reasons people like it.
And the 3200 was amazing, too. Mm-hmm. And Antonine had this way, you had to shoot it at 1250. Mm. And I don't know how he processed it.
Sure.
Because he just took our stuff from the set, shoot it at 1250, and then they would send it off for processing. And I just thought that was the most beautiful film shot at that way,
sure.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I had that in my bag, but I didn't load it. I mean, you saw I shot literally 2.5 rolls of film because it happened quickly. I didn't know what I was really looking at. I'm not a war photographer. That was a whole different experience, and part of it is shot before the towers fell, and part of it is shot after. But the after was it's not like I went, oops, towers fell, now I'm keeping shooting. No, I was standing on a corner, wondering what to do, took a picture of the church with the burning things, watching literally people, big things the size of trucks fall, wondering, could I get closer? No, that's dangerous, right? And I made my way to this corner, and there was scaffolding because they were doing work on 90 West Street. Mm-hmm. And I kind of just paused for a moment thinking, okay, what next? What do I do? How do I manage this situation? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I just heard, and I knew instantly, building falling.
Right.
I did not look up and confirm, thank God. There was a cop, a couple people, and I literally just turned and went, run!
And just go.
Go. And first thought, okay, besides building falling, run, I thought psychology 101, fight or flight. I'm like, wow, I'm in it. This is the real deal. And then there's a doorway. Uh-huh. And one of the cops, this female, goes in here. And I fight or flight. Do it, not do it, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know the buildings would come down like this. Nobody did.
Right.
The way it was broken, it was going to do this on me and knock all the other buildings down.
Right.
That's what's in here.
Right.
I chose doorway. Mm-hmm. Literally I also then thought, because I grew up my first 3.5 years in tornado country,
Sure.
West Texas, eastern New Mexico. And I remember my mom saying, if you see a tornado and it's coming towards the house, go for a bathtub, go for a corner,
Go for a doorway.
go for something like that. So I thought, okay, corner. And I literally did Superman.
Uh-huh.
And the shockwave of that building just blew up that lobby. And it just took me and I was about this far from the wall and just slammed me against the wall. Boom. And then there's no memory. All of this, it was just deafening rumble that I really couldn't remember what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was over.
Were there any...
And then you couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And someone screamed, I can't breathe. And someone said, put your face on the ground. And I thought, okay, good idea. And I did this, and I saw like this much talcum powder, essentially.
Yeah.
And I went, and it blew out a little hole, and I put my face in it like that.
Yep.
And then I heard someone say, the door's over this way, we can get out. And I got up on my knees, and I said, keep speaking, we can't hear you.
Right. And you can't see anything.
The door is from here to there, Matt.
Yeah, it's close.
And I knew which direction the door was.
Right.
And even though emergency lights had come on, which I didn't register that they had come on,
Sure.
I said, reach out your hands. And we did this so you could touch someone.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you realize, like, because you didn't know what you were going to step over,
Right.
or into,
Right.
or fall through, I then decided, okay, we're going in that direction. So I would unscrew my filter, shoot some pictures.
And
And
those
then-
are the photographs that were shot inside.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a...
A policeman with a flashlight and
So that's
people
from
trying
that
to get
scene,
out
is you guys trying to get out.
of that lobby. And then I would screw the filter back on and move a little and then screw the filter off and take another shot and screw the filter
Was
on.
it just like a UV
Yeah,
filter?
yeah.
You're using it as a lens cap, essentially.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cause I
Genius.
and I was
Yeah.
actually doing this, which was stupid. Like I was blocking my camera and everything from getting. We were covered in
Right.
this debris.
So you're shooting from the hip, basically, for
Totally.
this whole experience.
Totally, yeah, you couldn't do that. Hoping it was sharp and all that. Like I was on the whole. At least I had my wits. I was like, okay, manual, F, whatever. Lots of depth of field.
Yeah.
It's fast film. Go for it.
Rock and roll.
You know, it's going to be sharp.
Which camera were you using?
A D4, Nikon D4,
Oh, those things are built like tanks.
with the like whatever that lens is, 25 to at the time like 55 or something like that. It was a 2.8 zoom,
Nice.
something like that.
So a camera that was actually well suited to the situation.
Oh, yeah.
Like you could beat the hell out of that camera and it'll just ask for more.
Yeah, a real camera.
It's gonna get like if you had the Hasselblad with you, that's not gonna cut it
I
necessarily
might
in
have.
a
That thing's,
dusty,
they're tanks too.
ruinous environment. All the ones I play with are really cantankerous. Maybe I just have bad luck.
I don't know, but you know, so from the time of like rumble, building falling, all those thoughts I just told you, to diving in the doorway, getting slammed against the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and then the building continuing to fall for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
I went through all my goodbyes to those I love. I said, I just begged that it would be quick. Because, right, we see people trapped in collapsed buildings and like your
Yeah.
legs are
You don't want to be that guy.
severed and you're just die of dehydration slowly over 3 or 4 days, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is all what's passing through your head.
And you know how long it took that building to fall?
Don't remember.
10 seconds. So in 10 seconds, an entire thought process,
Yeah.
life goals, gone. Gone.
Right.
Like this whole thing that should take an hour to talk about, 10 seconds. Like that's how your adrenaline goes in a situation like that.
It's almost like a dream in some ways.
You know, and that fucks your, that
No,
messes
we can say the fuck word. It's fine.
that messes your brain chemistry
Right.
up.
Yeah. That makes sense.
You know, I didn't realize it. I thought I was fine. It was only later that I actually got help. They diagnosed me with PTSD, and you know, it was a
Yeah.
hard world.
That's a huge, at least to realize, like, I need to stop and address this. That's huge.
Yeah.
Was working through those photographs in terms of getting the film developed and getting your contact sheets back. And was that something that was helpful and
No,
cathartic, or was it?
No, it worked differently. As a journalist, right? And I was used to this type of thing. I just sent my film straight to the Time. I sent it to one of the editors I know.
Just didn't even develop it. Just said, here's the film.
Yeah, because Time has their own lab in the bottom of the building.
Of course.
You know, that's where James Nachtwey processes his film and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I just sent it to there, said, this is for the lab, run this way. Right?
Perfect.
Like I knew push this one a bunch of stops because it was the lobby one and stuff like that.
Right.
And they did. And then a day or two later, they didn't send contact sheets back. They sent back little contact prints that they must have done digitally somehow.
Oh.
So they were cropped and stuff.
Interesting.
They were like 3x5s or something.
Wow.
And with thanks, but we don't want the black and white.
Please.
Well, you know, orange fire
I
and
know.
blue sky
And
looks
you
a lot
shot
better.
Color that night.
No, it was the
Or
next day.
The next day.
The next day.
I saw some color from there, and it's like, okay, I get the impact.
But that was me just kind of walking around my neighborhood not really knowing what to do or
Sure.
how to cover it anymore.
Right.
I should have gone back over to the pile
Right.
and worked it,
Right.
but I couldn't bring myself to do it. In fact, I didn't go back to that ever.
Right.
Except once to shoot Larry Silverstein, who's one of the owners of some of the World Trade Center buildings.
Huh.
I had to shoot him for, I don't know, Forbes or Fortune or Business Week or something like that.
So
And
Time sends you back a thanks, but no thanks.
Thanks but no thanks, and here's the images. And then, only then, did I actually look at the images and be like, wow, I shot that. Wow, that's a spine. Wow, those are fingers.
Right.
Like at the time, I thought that's what they were, but I didn't know.
And you're going fast. There's a lot
And
going
I'm
on.
just like, I got to keep moving here. And I can't do this because
Right.
things could
Kill you.
come out of the sky at you.
Yeah.
I was as close as I felt I could safely be, and yet it was just this. You've seen the 1940s pictures of the ticker tape parades after the guys come back from war in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the air and that's what it was like with just this stuff
Just
and
everywhere.
and particles that you could hear. You didn't know what was happening. Then you realized all this stuff's falling out of the air still.
Right.
It was wild because it's burning out of the building and just being
Ejected.
ejected. You know.
Right.
Solid objects,
Everything.
you know, small
Right.
solid objects, but still.
Still. So then, how long did it take you then to really work through those images? Because I know you have a very cohesive show now from that body of work.
Originally, I had put together a book, and I did a self-published book. I'm sorry I didn't bring it in today. And that had more than 16, obviously.
Sure.
And I thought it was a very good edit. I had help with a friend that designed it,
Cool.
and that's cool. Then later, I worked for a guy named Graham Howe. He owns Curatorial Assistants out in Pasadena, California. So they design and travel shows. They archive, you know, photographers' work. They,
Cool.
you know, they do. They're huge in the art world in that sense. And in working for him, I became friends with him. Great guy, and he took the images and went through it, and that is actually the Graham Howe edit, the 16 images.
So the marks on the contact sheets.
Don't know if those were his or not.
I think there's
There's
some that could have been yours, and
Yeah.
then some that could have been someone else's. That's just interesting.
I think he may have taken those little cropped ones that Time had sent back to me and done it like that.
Laid it out and figured out the.
Yeah, and I think the circles were me telling whoever printed it, because you guys have printed some, and this guy, Jim McGargy, printed some in New York. And I think that's where those circles came from.
Nice.
This one, not that one, kind of a thing.
Sure. Awesome. So then that takes place over, I mean, probably if someone else is doing the edit, it probably goes pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you have the prints made and put them up. I know they've been up here at NAU.
Yep, at the Riles Gallery.
And where else has that show been?
The whole show has been there and at this place in Albuquerque called the Albuquerque Photographers Gallery. That was the 10-year anniversary. Wow, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're more or less a commercial kind of art, like art for like, not a serious art gallery. No offense to them, but they sell art that is for tourists to take home and put up some little piece of New Mexico on their wall.
Sure.
But they were nice, and they carved out this space in their gallery, and we had this show.
Right.
And it was amazing. Like every news outlet showed up, and I was on all these talk shows, and it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so it showed there. And then later, the Whitliff collections at Texas State San Marcos, Bill Whitliff and that huge photographic collection, they purchased 3 images.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being shown those 3 this year.
Nice.
And 3 images are right now going to be up in the Monroe Gallery in Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the entire show
Here at the Monochrome Gallery.
here at Monochrome Gallery.
Awesome.
Check it out. That's so cool. So it's been 20 years since that,
Crazy, right?
and it's I'm just glad that you were there to shoot it, because the photographs are incredible.
That's nice
And
to hear. Thank
yes,
you.
it's hard to talk about, and yes, it's hard to look at, but oh God, they're so good. It really gives you a feeling. So moving forward from there, right? You are a professor now at NAU, Northern Arizona University, where you teach photography.
Yep.
So that's your day job, right? What photography projects do you work on? What are you working on for yourself or for your clients?
Since I've been here, I continued on with my Cowboys of East Germany project.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
So I started that in 2002
Mm-hmm.
and 3. That was all 4x5 camera. Yeah, it was crazy traveling there and doing that. And then in 2010, I made a movie there, and that was
Oh.
part of my graduate degree.
Nice.
That's distributed by Alexander Street Films, which is kind of cool, though no one's ever bought it that I know of. And
No royalty checks? Dang it.
and then in 2016, the year after I got here, I went back and did more portraits, but this time all on digital.
Sure.
Because I thought finally digital had gotten to a place that could look pretty close to that 4x5, certainly on a medium format. But I thought, well, I have 35 millimeter, and I can enlarge it about that size, and it still looks really good. So I thought,
Nice.
okay, I'm going to do this on digital this time.
So you waited a long time to shift to digital.
Totally.
I mean, the 4x5 is like that recently is, and those photographs are gorgeous.
That was fun doing that.
And all in color, right?
All in color.
Love that.
And literally 1 to 2 pictures per person.
Just
'Cause I
one holder, and that's all you get.
That's it, because I couldn't travel with a ton of film.
Right.
It was really hard.
Still a nightmare.
Even worse now. But
Yeah.
after 9/11, all traveling with film was hard.
Yeah.
And 4x5, like, we need to open this box. I'm like, no, you do not.
I hear those horror stories all the time.
So I had to work to figure out. All those got processed even in Germany,
Yeah.
because I wasn't about to fly back home to process them.
No, you gotta like buy your film there, process it there, then you can take it.
Yeah, but I only bought film there in need, but it was hard because I was in a very rural place where you could not buy that film.
Sure.
And it wasn't like, oh, overnight Amazon,
Ah, yes.
just that didn't
What-
exist.
What film stock was it for this
Uh,
project?
Kodak 160, usually the VC.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Big old 4x5, couple of lights,
Print film.
studio style, right?
I took lights
Ah,
and sometimes did a shoot-through umbrella because I wanted it to look natural light, but mostly I found, open shade or the backside of a building or against a big window, and I
Sure.
put up my backdrop and just shoot.
and that's an ongoing project still, or is that like mostly finished?
I think it's mostly finished.
Mhm.
That culminated. It's had a few exhibits, but it culminated in a really big exhibit in Hamburg 2-3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Which was really awesome. I mean, it was awesome to see, like, Peter, the big cowboy,
Mm-hmm.
printed the
The
size
size
of
of a
your
fridge.
refrigerator. you know,
Big prints.
big prints. It was
Well,
awesome.
4x5 has that advantage. It certainly looks good, really big.
And you know, this was designed by an art director, and like how you walk through it and move. It was just really awesome. You know,
Cool.
and that like was cool. Like what I'd like to come out of it is a book next. You know, but I haven't really pursued that.
Oh, they're so expensive.
Well, I don't want to publish it myself. I want it to be published.
Right.
So I don't know how to do it. I guess I gotta
I have a guy you might talk to.
do something.
I know a guy. We'll do that.
And then another, you know, and that satisfied my interest in anthropology and like how I was trying to do portraits differently and look at things differently and such like that.
And that was part of your master's.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
I had started that before my master's, but I took that project in to finish it as a master's
Sure.
because I knew so far I had just had portraits.
Right.
And I knew there was more to this project, and I knew the angle I wanted to come at it from, but I didn't know how to get there. And graduate school put it all into focus for me, and
Love
I
that.
completed it.
Sweet.
So in that sense, it was worth it.
In the money sense,
In the money sense, yeah.
maybe not.
But you know, that was really helpful. Another project, like recently, I've been working on one about heavy metal with Native Americans and this love of heavy metal in Native Americans.
I'm a big heavy metal fan, so I'm super into that.
I mean, I started calling it Heavy Metal Nation after the Navajo Nation.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized, well, you know, I grew up and my family's still around, you know, Laguna and Acoma and Hopi and Zuni. And okay, so it can't be nation, so I started calling it Heavy Metal Natives.
Nice.
And,
Makes sense.
you know, it's been fun because I have an idea that this speaks to Native Americans, this music, in some cases on different levels, spiritual levels, actual audio and, you know, visceral levels, as well as the lyrics and the this and the that. And so I go into it with like, can I photograph you? And yes, and here's what I'm doing, and okay. And I interview them. And I really like try to get a sense of what this means to them, right? In their own words. And it is kind of going towards what I sort of halfway think it might be. So
That's always good.
we'll see. You know, what's on the website right now is, honestly, it's more or less like, they're great shots, the ones I've put up, but there's differences. And I've been searching for the right aesthetic to tell this story, you know?
One of the things I can appreciate a lot about the way that I've seen you work and the way that you chase these long-term projects is it's not something you're going to do in 10 minutes and then be done with it.
Takes years.
You're really committing to these projects and spending a lot of time with them,
Yeah.
which a lot of them need.
Yeah, you can't. And that's what I disliked about certain things in journalism.
It's the opposite of journalism in
Right.
so many ways.
I wanted this kind of ability to be able to do that.
Yeah, you're either going to shoot 10 assignments or 15 assignments a day and scratch the surface, or
Yeah.
you're going to go deep for years
Yeah.
on a project like this. Are you shooting mostly on digital? Are you shooting any on film anymore?
Totally on digital. It's so
Converted.
I know. Well, that's not true. I have been shooting, you know, the project, and I haven't been shooting recently on it, but before I left LA, I shot Los Angeles artists on 4x5 pinhole.
Oh, I do remember that project.
And
That's
that-
how we met.
Yeah, and that has been, I love that project.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool, and I'd like to continue it with other artists in other places because it's a really cool, because the nature of pinhole, you have to take a long time, in some cases long time, to make an exposure.
Like hours?
Well, one of my exposures of one of the models is literally 35 minutes.
Ooh.
So I got 2 pictures of him
I was going to say, I bet your model
in
wasn't
an
thrilled.
hour and 10 minutes. No, it was a perfect thing because he's a type artist.
Ah, okay.
Gorgeous stuff.
Right.
And he showed up, agreed to be shot, showed up. He was like, I don't know if I can do this, man. I am so sick. I really don't feel good. And I was like, oh, man, we got to shoot this. We got to shoot this. I've got this guy. Like, and I had arranged with a downtown Los Angeles restaurant. They didn't even know me, but they knew my friend. And they were like, here's the key.
Oh,
I was like, wow, okay.
sweet.
Because he had done this whole wall in this restaurant
Sure.
by hand,
Mhm.
right? And that's where I wanted to shoot him. So I had this idea, and they had this old sort of Victorian-looking couch. So we go in there. I know I'm going to shoot him against there. I don't know what I'm going to do. He's telling me he's sick and can't like even stand up. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I start taking meter readings and then calculating reciprocity,
Oh.
and then realize like, holy shit, this is going to be a 35-minute exposure. What am I going to do? So I noticed this old Victorian looking couch. I pull it over. I'm like, I have a good idea. Just lay down, take a nap, because it's going to take me a little while to set up. I mean, if you sleep 10, 15 minutes, no big deal. It's like, oh, thanks, man. That's really great. Really great. Meanwhile, I was set up. Second he lays down and closes his eyes, I open exposure, and I just start talking like, okay, so we're doing this. Just keep relaxing, and then And then after like 15 minutes, he's like, my knees really hurt. Can I bend? I'm like, hold on. We just started the exposure. Yeah, you can bend them, but okay, don't move your arms, don't move this, don't move that. Just lift your legs, bend them, and put them back. And he goes, okay. And so he does it. And that's why you can see the couch through his legs in that shot. And then, and I said, okay, so we tried a little, we're just about ready. So if you just stay in that position because it's perfect,
Right.
we're going to go ahead and go for it. Okay, thanks for letting me bend my legs. So another 15, 20 minutes, and he falls asleep. And then he wakes up, and I said, all right, so great. We're going to really do the main shot now. And I did one more long. I said, just fall asleep. It's perfect.
Don't move.
I said, because this is like a 10-minute exposure. He goes, okay, great. And
That's
he
a
fell
great
asleep
photo shoot.
for 35 minutes.
I'd love
and
to be
I
able to
sat
do
there
that.
like thinking, okay.
I do a lot more modeling, you know, if all I had to do was show up and go to sleep.
right?
Okay, I'll take a nap for you, for your art. That's awesome.
So that was pretty cool.
I love that.
And there were a lot of things like that where, you know, but the working with Pinhole, I'm walking around through the frame. I'm walking in with a strobe and popping things, thinking it's doing something. Later learned, it kind of does. Sometimes
really.
doesn't. Sort of depends.
Nice.
Yeah, and just, you know, but you're interacting. Normally they're not asleep. And so they're interacting.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a video because you're interacting in the spaces with them that they interact with that inspire them.
Right.
And yet it's one shot.
Right.
I just love it.
It's a whole story. And it's small. If you're going to do a contact print, you know,
Yeah.
from a 4x5, because that's what we did, right? We did a platinum
print.
From that negative, and it's like, well, it's a very small, very intimate,
Yes, you have to
completely different experience.
come in to see it.
Right. It's like
I
the
know.
opposite of your giant cowboy portraits.
Yeah,
Which I think it's good for artists to be able to sort of,
I think so too.
or photographers or whatever you self-identify as, to be able to do a little bit of big, do a little bit of small, you know, mix
Yeah.
and match a little bit. That's cool. So here's a fun one. As a professor of photography, what do you think the next 10 years holds for the photography industry and specifically the analog photography side of things? What do you see happening in the next 10 years?
Well, I have never, ever been the good predictor of what's coming down the lines.
Well, yeah, maybe this will be your
You know,
one.
And the truth is, I'm a very slow adopter.
Right.
I still think the power of the still image rules.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think can go away because what could replace that? Video doesn't replace it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving images, live images on your iPhone are cool, but they don't replace it. There's something about telling an entire story in that one frame that you have to sit there as a viewer and look at and read and discern for yourself what it is. I think what's important, and I try to teach my students, especially in the theory and psychology of photography, is that like the greatest source of illiteracy will not be words and text, it will be the imagery, the fact that you don't understand how to discern what's good, what's bad, why am I looking at this, what is it leading me a direction, how to read photos.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that'll go away, whatever the technology is. Like photography, since its inception, has always followed technology. Technology has driven it. You know, and technology's been the death nail in some of it, right? Right? Like daguerreotypes, they weren't reproducible.
Right.
But then when it was on a glass plate, you could reproduce it.
Right.
Now, no more daguerreotypes. Now we're into, wet plate like this.
Right.
And it's always been that way. So whatever the technology goes to will take away our cameras as we know them. But I don't think the power of the still image will change, no matter how much influence moving and video and all this stuff. Like even in my movie, what was powerful were the interviews and all the stuff on video that you see, but the interplay of the still in there that forced you, while there's narration going on,
Right.
to stop and look.
Right.
Ken Burns picked up on that a long time ago,
Genius.
you know?
Yep. However much the Ken Burns effect is overused, it works.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Awesome. Where can people find your work and more about you? Do you have a website, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok?
All that stuff. Well, almost all that stuff. I don't really understand TikTok yet. But,
Me neither.
But ericoconnell.com.
Good.
2 N's, 2 L's, and O'Connell.
We'll put that in the show notes.
And my Instagram is Eric O'Connell Photographer.
Easy to remember.
Easy to remember. Twitter, I think, is Pinhole Pics.
Ooh, I like that
Because
one.
I started it when I started that Pinhole project.
Let's do some more of those.
I'd love to.
That'd be
It'd be
fun.
fun to shoot you guys.
That'd be great. Let's do it. Well, sweet, man. Thanks for joining us and chatting. And let's go make some pinholes. I think that'd be fun.
Thank you, man. This has been really cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Anyway.
it.
See you in the next one.